Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm bringing you another video, and this is a really exciting one. You're going to want to stay tuned. Make sure if you enjoy it, you like, comment, subscribe and share. So let's get into this. In this video I'm going to be discussing the recent qualifiers that we had for the May Melee tournament. Now this video isn't going to be covering the games leading up to this to determine standings. That will be in a coming video where I look at my predictions for the future matches. This video is just going to be looking at the 6 games that took place to determine which 4 teams would go to the May Melee tournament. So let's kick things off with APAC. Now, we saw the Shanghai Dragons take on a dominant Philadelphia Fusion. Philadelphia Fusion came into this game being the favourites as they had a 4-0 standing. They had looked really clean and professional in every single game they played, especially considering they had 2 new players come on board soon before the season started. This would have given Fusion fans faith that they would have been even better at this point than they were at the start of the season and would be able to clutch out this game. Whereas on the other side, we had the Shanghai Dragons, a dominant team from last year, making a replacement of the main tank role, which after a shaky start would have made fans worried. Shanghai dropped a game to Chengdu Hunters during this first tournament of the Overwatch League. So in this game, Philadelphia were obviously the favourites, but Shanghai managed to take it away in a thrilling 3-2 series. Shanghai looked really impressive, were able to take down a very crucial team in this tournament. This really asserts Shanghai's dominance once more and puts them back in the conversation for best APAC team. Whereas previously they would have been written off and people would have only been discussing Philadelphia Fusion and the Chengdu Hunters, and possibly Seoul Dynasty on a good day. So, Shanghai was through to the May Melee. But who from APAC would be joining them? Well, we saw the Chengdu Hunters, a new, revitalised team from last year. They have looked extremely dominant throughout their first 4 games, only dropping one of them to the Philadelphia Fusion. While Chengdu would be taking on the Seoul Dynasty, a very inconsistent team, but started off this season well. Who would take this game? Well, Chengdu was definitely the favourites going into it, but we all know that Seoul Dynasty has a tendency to just pick it up and really get going in tournament formats. But this was not the time for that. The Chengdu Hunters took this in a 4-map series, resulting in a 3-1 win for Chengdu. So Shanghai and Chengdu were through to the May Melee from APAC, but who would be meeting them when they got there from North America? Well, this one's quite shocking. The teams from North America competing to go to the May Melee tournament at this stage were the Toronto Defiant, Florida Mayhem, Dallas Fuel, San Francisco Shock, Washington Justice, and Houston Outlaws. From this bunch, Houston Outlaws and Washington Justice were coming in with the highest seeds, not dropping a single game. But people would have been expecting Shock to replace one of these 2 teams going into the tournament. The first game up was Toronto Defiant versus Florida Mayhem, and if you've been watching my channel, this one stings. This one really stings. A 3-0 to the Florida Mayhem. I had so much faith in Toronto, and this did not reflect what I was expecting from them. While it was a hot take for me to think Toronto would take this series, I still felt it, but Florida absolutely dominated this series. OG looked really good in this series and the next one, but Yaki especially is a beast. If you thought his last year performance was good, this year has just looked better. Many may have considered him a bit of a Tracer one trick, but we learnt here that his Echo was absolutely phenomenal and top tier. Florida Mayhem being one of the few teams running Echo consistently, but Yaki still looked very dominant on it. Toronto, on the other hand, you shouldn't be too upset with this. The fact they even got to this stage in fairly dominant fashion really does indicate that they could be a top 5 or 6 team in North America, come the right meta. But it wasn't to be for now, Toronto fans. Florida Mayhem took you down handily. And now we'll move on to the next game, the Dallas Fuel versus San Francisco Shock. Now let me lay this out for you, and you tell me what you think. San Francisco Shock, the 2-time champions, gods of the Overwatch League. They have someone who's considered to be a top 2 coach in the league in Krusty, striker, an insane hit scan player, Violet, MVP candidate, FD god, the Boop King, versus Dallas Fuel, a team that doesn't even have a hit scan player. Who's going to win? Well, I'll tell you now, it wasn't the kings of the Overwatch League. It wasn't the San Francisco Shock. In fact, it wasn't even nearly the San Francisco Shock. Dallas Fuel mopped the floor with San Francisco Shock, making them look like a bottom tier team. 3-0 to Dallas. And my god, Dallas Fuel, really, extremely impressive throughout all the games they play here. The fact they're playing off meta does not faze them one bit. Sparkle can whip out the Tracer if need be, but other than that, his Symmetra is a really underrated pocket pick. His Doomfist, we all know, is incredible. Doha, the Sombra, is mwah, beautiful, and his Mei is world class. Then you got the tank line, extremely dominant, and I want to highlight Fearless. It's a quarter of the season, but I'm going to say it now, Fearless should be an MVP candidate. If he keeps up this level of play, or even if he maintains half this level of play, he should be in the conversation for MVP of this season. If I was giving an MVP for each quarter of the season, he would be it right now. Fearless is such a phenomenal Winston player. Best Winston in the league. I don't even think there's an argument to be made for anyone else. Sure, you can give your suggestions on who it could be, you know. Smurf's pretty good. Gaga showed us a bit of good Winston. No, Fearless trumps them tenfold. That's not even to say he's a Winston one-trick. His Reinhardt looked incredible. He was main tank diffing super in every single Reinhardt map they played. It was not even close. And the support line. We saw Fielder play quite a lot here, which we hadn't previously. We'd seen Rappel come in, and he looked really good on the Baptiste, I must say. He was cleaning up a lot of the kills, maintaining the heals, and against Violet of all people. That was really impressive. Well, next up, we saw Florida Mayhem take down Toronto, but now they were facing a totally bigger beast, the Washington Justice. Before this game, I saw on Instagram, I saw on Twitter, Washington posting all these memes, like, I'll put one on the screen right now. Yep, that's one we saw from Washington. They were confident going into this. They were like, yeah, we got Decay, Mag, Fury, we got this in the bag, Chief. No! Florida took this 3-1 in what must be an upset. Florida recognised a really big weak in the armour of Washington Justice, and I'll explain that now. Florida Mayhem's main tank, OG, is definitely best on his Winston. The issue is, so is Mag from the Washington Justice. How do they get around this? Well, Florida just doesn't play to their strengths. Instead, they play to Washington's weaknesses. They play OG on the Reinhardt rather than mirroring the Winston, which just inherently gives them an advantage on Reinhardt-centric maps. When Washington tried to match this, Mag would just get main tank differenced hard. Mag's Reinhardt is a lot, and I mean a lot worse than his Winston. It's clear to see now this is a big fault in the Washington Justice. If they can't get their metas off Winston right, it looks detrimental for this team. 3-1 to Florida Mayhem. I'd say came off the back of some great recognition from their team, from their coaching, to realise that Mag wasn't as strong on the Reinhardt, to just try and mirror Reinhardt. And if one team's playing Reinhardt and one team's playing Winston on a Reinhardt map, well, the Reinhardt team's just going to do better as long as he can just hold his own. But that's it. Florida Mayhem through to the main melee. That is definitely an upset. I don't think anyone was expecting Florida to make it this far, apart from Florida fans. And even them would have definitely been shaky going into this match. Washington, on the other hand, not all is lost. I know you spent big this season, but you still have 3 tournaments to try and bring it back and try and make your money's worth of roster. Then we're going to the final game, though. The Battle of Texas, the second installment. Dallas Fuel versus Houston Outlaws. Now, background about these guys. Houston Outlaws, 4-0 going into this game. They were definitely the best team in this first quarter of the season. But we haven't seen them in a tournament format like this one just yet. Dallas Fuel, on the other hand, we saw them dominate San Francisco's Shock. Now, Houston did beat Shock, implying they're a better team, but Shock you cannot underestimate, and the fact they got 3-0 on them should make Houston Outlaws scared. Also, the first time this team met back in week 1, Dallas Fuel had spent about 4 days without one of their players. That's right, they didn't know what they were doing, and they still took it to a 3-2 game with Houston. They lost, but it was close. Now here, Dallas Fuel has only got stronger and stronger and stronger. Dallas is now used to not playing meta. Dallas is used to not having the hit scans. They're playing to their strengths and they're getting damn good at it. Houston, on the other hand, they'll be able to play the meta. They'll be able to put Django on what he wants to do and carry. So what is the result? 3-0 to the Dallas Fuel. My God, that is crazy. Houston Outlaws, it wasn't close. Something I've realised about Houston here is if Django is not in a position to pop off, they fail. Same goes for Happy, I'd say. They're the two players they need to have pop off. Dante is going to do well no matter what, but Dante is not enough. Happy and Django need to be in positions to carry the game. If you're not seeing Django light up the kill feed, then it's not going to look good for Houston, I'll tell you that much. This is the first game where Django got main tank difference, and it's against Fearless, and this just enforces my point of Fearless for first quarter MVP, please. Alright, now we'll just have a quick look at the games that are coming up next weekend for the actual main melee. It's going to be the same tournament structure that we saw from the Final Four last season, in which it's a double elimination bracket, meaning if you lose a game you're not all out, you can make a run through the losers bracket. But the first game we see up is Shanghai Dragons versus Florida Mayhem, and then we see Dallas Fuel versus Chengdu Hunters. And that's going to do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, like, comment, and share, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.